want you to go back with me in time, 9 years ago. I was sitting in my office and I was about to make a phone call, and I was not unaware of the gravity and importance of that phone call. Because it was a phone call that was going to directly impact the work of the Bear Valley Bible Institute, I assumed, for many years to come, and that ended up being right. It was a phone call to Keith Kasarjian in which I was calling to ask him if he would assume the role of the director of our international program. Keith was one that had been working in our program already for a little while, but he was, in my estimation, ideally suited for the role. Not only is Keith one that is very knowledgeable of Scripture, I figured we needed that for certain, but he was also one that had local work experience. He had preached in Alabama and Kentucky, especially Pikeville, Kentucky, I believe is probably the first time that I really got much of a chance to know Keith and the good work that he was doing in Pikeville. But Keith also was one that has an excellent memory of people and places, and has a love for traveling. So when you're thinking about all of the requirements and job description qualifications for the director of the international program, Keith was one that was ideally suited for that, and has proven to be just that for 9 years now. I love Keith. We've traveled together many times. Always enjoy that. We've got lots of funny stories and good memories of the work in a lot of different places. And so looking forward to a message from Keith. Come preach the word. Preach the word.
I asked Denny to keep it short and unglowing, and he didn't listen to me once again. It's always been fascinating to me that what constitutes early is dependent on what day of the week it is. 9 a.m. on Wednesday is not considered early. In fact, many people have already gotten in some work by then. But 9 a.m. on Saturday, that's kind of early. And so I'm recognizing you and appreciating you for being here this morning on a day that, at a time that seems pretty early for a Saturday. I once preached for a congregation who their arrangement was to have worship at 9, Bible class at 10. Their rationale was there would be more people for Bible class, and there was a higher percentage, and that was the case. But I also learned two things in that. 9 o'clock's really early on a Sunday morning. I learned two things. Number one, don't greet the congregation. You like to say, good morning. And at 9 a.m., you know what I got back in return? Or like 3 people. Or so I just stopped doing that. And I also learned that at 9 a.m., even the old ladies sing bass. And so it was a very enlightening experience. But I appreciate you being here. I know that there are those who are not, and I understand. I get that. But I'm happy that you are. And we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 10, the first 23 verses. Now, by the time we reach this point, a lot has already happened in the ministry of Jesus. In chapter 3, he has been baptized. We move on to chapter 4, and there are those temptations that he faced while he was in the desert. We get to chapters 5 through 7. We now have the great Sermon on the Mount. Chapters 8 and 9, quite a few miracles are listed all at one time, as Denny covered yesterday. And so a lot has already happened, and I say that because I think it's relevant, but that his ministry, as we would say, is picking up speed. And so this was the perfect time. He decided it was the time to do what is going to be revealed in this text. And so we're just going to look at the text today, and then we're going to make it really practical for us. By the way, if you're new at outlining, we have new students who are here. If you're new at outlining, this is a very easy text to practice on. And I want to suggest to you an outline of this particular text, Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 through 23. The first thing we see in this passage is that the apostles are selected. In verse 1, he says, "And having summoned his 12 disciples, he gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every kind of disease and every kind of sickness." Now, the names of the 12 apostles were these. The first, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax gatherer, James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. And so, and by the way, this list is also found in Mark 3 and Luke 6. But I think it's noteworthy that these 12 were first disciples. They were following him. They had proven their dedication. They had proven their concern for what he was doing in his ministry. And so based on that, based on them having proven themselves, he decided to appoint them as apostles. Also relevant to this text is that he gave them power to specifically to do miraculous things like take care of unclean spirits and cast them out and heal disease and sickness. And so at this point, Jesus has selected his apostles. The next thing that we see in this text as we are breaking this down into bite-sized pieces is that he commissions the apostles. The apostles are commissioned. We read what Jesus says in verses 5 through 8. And it reads like this. "These 12 Jesus sent out after instructing them, saying, 'Do not go in the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter any city of the Samaritans.'" Now, for you and I who don't live in that time frame, that seems very shocking, isn't it? If somebody reads this for the first time, they're surprised because we have in our mind go into all the world, but not yet. That's coming, but for now, this is what we call the limited commission. And that commission was that they were to not go to the Gentiles, not go to the Samaritans, verse 6, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That would be their focus. That is why this commission is limited to the house of Israel. Verse 7, "And as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand." This was the message. This was what was new and what was coming. Preach that the kingdom is at hand. Verse 8, "While you are doing that, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Freely you received, freely give." He gave them this authority, these powers to do these miraculous things because those would lend credibility to their word. We know that Jesus performed miracles to prove he was who he said he was. And in a similar way, these apostles were commissioned to go and preach that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, but he also gave them the ability to do these things that would be signs that they were actually representing God. And so we have in verses 5 through 8 that what is known as the limited commission and what they were supposed to do. They had a position, apostle, but they also had a task, and that was to preach that the kingdom was at hand and to perform these miraculous signs. And the next bite-sized chunk of this passage is the fact that the apostles were now instructed. In verses 9 through 15, he gives them instructions regarding 3 specific things that they were going to encounter. And I find these very interesting. And let's look at those together. First, he gives them instructions regarding their physical needs. In verses 9 and 10, he says, verse 9, he says, "Do not acquire gold or silver or copper for your money belts, or a bag for your journey, or even 2 tunics, or sandals, or a staff, for the worker is worthy of his support." And when you go into a village, he says, a city or a village, when you enter it, inquire who is worthy in it, and abide there until you go away. Now, You think about that. What he's telling them to do is to go to a place perhaps they've never been, and don't take anything with you. Now that is interesting. By the way, that was later changed. Luke chapter 22, Luke 22, 35 through 38. It was that rule for them was changed, and I'm happy to hear that. I pack light. For me, it's almost a necessity the way I travel in various places, one after the other. I can't travel heavy, but traveling light is really the way to go. By the way, if you're one of those people that pack 3 extra outfits just in case, I invite you to come over to the bright side. Come over to this side and learn the freedom and the joy of packing light. I do carry-on only always. 2 weeks in a foreign country, still carry-on only. But this, wow, this is extreme. People have asked me, how do you travel so light for periods of time? And I've jokingly said, just wear 6 layers of clothes and put a toothbrush in your pocket. But even that would have violated what Jesus told them to do. So regarding their physical needs, they were going to be totally dependent on what other people would provide for them. I think this was a test. I mean, how committed are you really? I'm going to send you to somewhere, and you're not even going to have any preparation. You're going to go literally with, as we would say, the clothes on our back. So he gave them instruction regarding their physical needs. Next, he gave them instruction regarding their accommodations. In verses 12 and 13, he says, "And when you enter the house, give it your greeting. And if the house is worthy, let your greeting of peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your greeting of peace return to you." What he's saying is, when you get there, you're going to be dependent on someone to host you. And you'll enter that house, and hopefully they will host you. But if they do not, then you'll just be without that particular night. And we have reason to believe, it would be right, I think, to infer there were some times they did without. There would be times they would have entered and no one would want to host them, and they would just spend the night wherever they could spend the night. And again, this is very, very difficult to think about. I'm often in a variety of places, but I've never had to completely, at least I don't remember many times where I could completely rely on someone else. Been a few, but not too many. But even at that point, I had some reasonable expectation I was not going to be outside on the ground all night, and I never have been. But these apostles would have at times had to do that. And again, I believe he's just testing them. We're going to find out how committed are you really. All right, then one more thing. He says, he warns them and gives them instruction about the reactions to their work. Verses 14 and 15, he says, "And whoever does not receive you, nor heed your words as you go out of the house or that city, shake off the dust of your feet. Truly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city." Wow, that's strong language, isn't it? But the conclusion we reach from that is there are going to be people who are not interested. There are going to be people who will not accept you, will not host you, will not listen to you, and you will just have to go away. The reactions to their works weren't always going to be one of reception. And he told them about that. And so you consider what he's asking of them. Go to a place that you don't know, and you don't know people there. Don't take anything with you. Don't make any provisions. Don't have any money. Don't have an ATM card in case you need some cash. No extra outfits. You just go and trust. Well, that's strong commitment on their part, wasn't it? And I can't help but compare it to us. And sometimes what we might allow to deter us, or maybe even turn us away. And I'm humbled by the fact that there were men who were willing to do this. And sometimes today we complain. Guys complain about the long flight. or the leg room, or the meal on the plane wasn't so good, or where we stayed, the Wi-Fi was down, and I want to say, the Apostle Paul is saying, read 2 Corinthians 11 and cry me a river, okay? These men were willing to make that kind of commitment based on their appointment as apostles and their commissioning by Jesus. And then that brings us to the fourth section of this passage, where the apostles were forewarned. As if this wasn't already challenging enough, Jesus gives them a warning that they are not always going to be well received. In fact, quite the opposite. Notice what he says. First of all, he says that there is going to be religious persecution. Verses 16 through 18. Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. How about that for really encouraging? Man, we're ready to go now. We're already, going to go with nothing to a place we haven't been. And hey, guys, it gets better. You're going to be like sheep in the middle of wolves. And therefore be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the courts, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. And you shall even be brought before governors and kings for my sake, as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. Say this is religious persecution, not only because of what they were going to be persecuted for, but also even where. Notice he says you're going to be scourged where? In the synagogues. And this is, the place where they would worship, the place where they would gather, they're going to be scourged. And you have to understand, the synagogue, to the Jew, the synagogue was much more than a place where you would worship. It was a part of their being. It was a part of who they were. You might remember in John chapter 12 and verse 48, there were those who believed on Jesus, but they wouldn't speak him for fear of what? Being cast out of synagogue. And so to be cast out of the synagogue was a very serious thing. But can you imagine being scourged in the synagogue? He warns them, you're going to suffer religious persecution. But not only that, you're going to suffer political persecution. But when they deliver you up, do not be anxious about how or what you will speak, for it shall be given you in that hour what you are to speak. So they're going to bring you up to the governors and the kings, and they're going to make a political issue out of this. And when that happens, verse 18, when that happens, don't be worried about what you're going to speak. You'll be told, it will be given to you in that hour. Again, we're going to have to go out in trust that when these things happen, that things are going to be okay eventually. Another thing that he says is that you're going to suffer family persecution. Verse 21, and brother will deliver up brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. Now don't read over that casually. That's some serious business, isn't it? And I got to think this would hurt more than anything, right? That, the religious persecution, political persecution, we get that. And it doesn't say that the brother is going to kill the brother, but he's going to deliver him up to be put to death. And he says that it's even going to be father delivering up child, and children rising up against their parents and causing them to be put to death. That's a serious forewarning that Jesus is giving these apostles. And then one more thing. He says there's going to be what I'm just calling general persecution. Verses 22 and 23, and you will be hated, not disliked, not disagreed with. You will be hated by all on account of my name. But it is the one who has endured to the end who will be saved. But whenever they persecute you in this city, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you shall not finish going through the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes. That is a suggested outline of this text. And in it we read, the commitment that was going to be required of them. Oh, by the way, that little camera emoji means that's the end of the slide for those who like to take notes with their phones, their cameras. There's your sign. Hey, it's not that funny. I'm just trying to help you out. My home congregation, the first time I did that, I said the same thing. That means that you can now take it. And some people raised their phone. I said, you're lazy, but go ahead, and you're not writing it down. Go ahead and do it. And the phones went down. They didn't want to be seen. Jesus says, I want you to go out fully committed, fully trusting, and oh, by the way, you're going to be persecuted, you're going to be hated, you're not going to be loved everywhere you go. But go. Makes me have all the more appreciation for those first 12. They weren't just apostles, they were the trailblazers for this new message that the kingdom is at hand. But these were people who are not us. They were the apostles, we're not. They had a job that is different than ours. That was the limited commission. Ours is not. So how do we make this practical? How do we make this live in our lives today? That's where we're going to spend the rest of our time today, because I think there are lessons for us, and I think that every lesson needs to be relevant and practical, and that's what we're going to do. So let's look at 3 practical takeaways for today. What does this mean for you and me today? The first thing I think of is the fact that we've also been commissioned. Now, as we've already noted, our commission is different than theirs. Theirs was limited, but ours is unlimited. By the way, this is Matthew 10. By the time we get to Matthew 28, the kingdom has already come, and the commission has changed from limited to unlimited. And the text there says, go into all the world and preach the gospel. And I don't believe it does any injustice to the text to read it in this way: as you go into all your world, preach the gospel. You know, none of us go into all the world. None of us can go into all the world. I've been in more parts of the world probably than most, but I haven't been to, where I've been is very small in comparison to where I haven't been. So we can't all go into all the world. But the reality is we all go into all of our world every single day. And that's where our focus needs to be. We go into all our world and we preach the gospel as well. The truth is, we have life-saving knowledge that other people need to have. And it's our responsibility, I would say it's also our privilege, to share that. I read some time ago about a very interesting legal case. There had been a car accident, and one of the bystanders there noticed that someone who drove past the wreck but did not stop was a doctor. They knew the doctor, and they saw him in his car, and he drove past and he did not stop. Word got back to the family. One of the car wreck victims died. And their family sued that doctor. And the judge ruled in the favor of the family. And his ruling said this: his knowledge of medicine made him responsible to stop and give assistance. Now you think about that. Our knowledge of Jesus and our knowledge of salvation, doesn't it also make us responsible to stop and give assistance? We have also been commissioned. And we need to remember that and take that seriously. There's a lot of, evangelism is kind of this big 50-cent word. We only use it in certain contexts. But what does it really mean? The best definition I've ever heard is attributed to Charles Spurgeon. And it's this: evangelism is one beggar telling another beggar where he can buy bread. One beggar telling another beggar where he can find bread. The truth is, spiritually, we're all beggars. But some of us have found the bread, and we need to tell others where they can find it too, because we've been commissioned, and we need to take that seriously. When we become soul conscious, we begin to see opportunities that were always there, but we didn't notice because that wasn't on our heart and on our mind. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 10 says, "As you have therefore opportunity, do good unto all men, especially those of the household of faith." That word opportunity is kairos, which suggests a seasonal time or opportunity. A seasonal time or opportunity. In other words, it's an opportunity I have now I may never have again. And the truth is, we all have once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to help change somebody's eternal destination. But if we're not paying attention, they will go away and we'll never get it again. And that's why we have to be soul conscious. We gravitate toward those things that we care about. If you and I are outside talking, and suddenly my head drifts up like this, it's not that I've become bored with your conversation. It's because I heard the sound of an airplane above me. It's a mile above. It's just a single engine plane, but I heard it. You may not have, but I did. You know why? I like airplanes. And it happened to me this morning. I walked out of the hotel and I heard one. I found him. And I have an app that I can go to and I can find that plane. I'll know the model number of it and the tail number of it. And yes, that's extremely nerdy, but that's what I like to do. And that sound is a mile above me, but I noticed it. Why? I like airplanes. I have a good friend who is in commercial real estate. He's very successful in commercial real estate. He owns apartment buildings, shopping malls, office complexes, is all of these things. And when you ride around with him, he sees what you don't see. I see a vacant lot. You know what he sees? Wonder who owns that and what I could do with that lot. I see an empty building. He sees a phone number that he's going to call. You see the difference? We got to get to be the same way about souls. We have opportunities, and we don't see them sometimes because we just haven't been soul conscious enough. Earlier this year, I was in Lagos, Nigeria, having a meeting with one of our best co-workers there, and it was a great meeting and all that, but he and I have a mutual friend in Uganda. And I said, hey, let's give him a call. And so we video called him from where we were, and he answered, and he was out in the middle of nowhere. The connection was really bad, but he told us he was out on a campaign in northern Uganda. I've not been to this place. I've been near this place, but not been there. But I wanted to show you, so after we hung up, he sent me a video, sent this video of where he was. Now that vehicle belongs to them, to the school that was on the campaign. But I want you to see where this is. This is real life. And everybody who lives there has a real soul.
I'm okay.
By the way, one of the best things we're doing in the international program is we're training gospel preachers who are from places like this, who will go back to places like this and reach them in places where you and I never could. They were out on this campaign. And I got to thinking, if I made an announcement, who wants to go and join them on this campaign? I bet, not here, but anywhere, I bet there would be quite a few hands. I'd like to do that. But if I ask who's willing to go to their next door neighbor or their coworker or that other baseball mom, who's willing to do that? We need to be soul conscious. We need to remember that we too have been commissioned. And let me also say that we need to remember that it isn't just those who have never been saved that we need to be concerned about. It's also the lost who have gone out from among us. We forget about them sometimes. According to 2 Peter 2, 20 through 22, it's going to be worse for them. But we sometimes forget about them. If this pulpit, come tomorrow, this pulpit was missing. By the way, isn't this liberal? This clear pulpit? Isn't that liberal? If this pulpit was missing we'd begin asking, where's the pulpit? Anybody seen the pulpit? Hadn't found the pulpit. And if we don't find the pulpit, we're going to put it in the bulletin. If you've seen the pulpit, please bring it back. Let us know where it is. I'm right? But every time the church gathers, there are some of us who are missing. And what are we doing to get the lost back? My home airport is a small airport. I like that. We have 6 gates, and 3 of them are never used. And it's really nice. It's small. I get through security in 2 minutes. Also, because I'm there often, I know a lot of the people there. This week when I was coming here, I didn't need to go to the ticket counter because it was a domestic flight and I already have my boarding pass on my phone. And so I just went to security and then to the gate. And I'm sitting at the gate and my phone rings, and it's a number that is not associated with a contact. So I almost didn't answer it, but it was a local number, so I did. And I said, hello? And on the other end, I heard, Keith, where are you? And I immediately knew the voice. This is Bobby, one of the ticket agents. I said, Bobby, I'm at the gate. Where are you? She said, well, I'm at the ticket counter. But I saw your name on the list, and I haven't seen you. And I want to make sure you didn't miss your flight. And I said, thank you, but I'm at the gate. And then we chatted for a couple more minutes. And then at the end, she said, now, Keith, you know I love you, but my shift just ended, so I'm not coming to see you at the gate. I'm going home. And I said, that's okay. There are people who won't even come to the 9 a.m. session. No, I didn't say that. And but after we hung up, I thought, she put forth more effort to make sure I don't miss my flight than we do sometimes to make sure people don't miss heaven. We've been commissioned. Those who've never been saved and those who were once saved and need to come back. We've been commissioned. We need to take it seriously. The second thing that I take away from this is that our efforts are not always going to be easy or appreciated either. And we know what it was going to be like for the apostles. And we're not going to always face some of those same things. But it's not going to be easy or always appreciated for us either. And we need to know that, and we need to understand that. Now, our first century brethren were persecuted and killed. We're probably not going to happen. That's probably not going to happen to us, but it does still happen today. If you would like to Google Odisha, O-D-I-S-H-A, Odisha persecution, you can just Google that. There are people, this is a state in India, where people have been killed for being Christians. They actually have anti-conversion laws that you can't you're a Hindu and you can't become a Christian, you'll be killed. You can be imprisoned for teaching somebody who is a Hindu the gospel of Christ. These things still do happen. By the way, the church is going in that state. In fact, they've requested that we start a school to train preachers for that state. Isn't that amazing? These guys say, we might be killed for preaching the gospel, but could you come help us preach it better? It's not always going to be easy or appreciated for us either. But here's the difference, is sometimes we keep our mouths shut because we're afraid of either being laughed at or left out. It's not going to be easy or appreciated, but it never has been. So is that going to stop us? Now, any message, the reception of any message is dependent on 2 things. The reception of any message is dependent on 2 things. Number one, the manner in which the message is presented. The manner in which we present the message has a bearing on the reception of that message. Isn't that right? And that's where some of our brethren need to really just get a grip on it and understand that you can have the right message, but if you present it in the wrong way, it's not going to be too flavorful, if you will, for the one hearing it. That's why Ephesians 4 and verse 15 says, speak the truth how? In love. And we need to be careful about that. By the way, some of my brethren need to get off social media because they mean well, but I don't know that they're doing well. That's not really the platform to be sharing some things that are of eternal importance. There's better ways to share that and not leave a bad taste. But the manner in which the message is presented, and secondly, the perspective of the recipient. Perspective of the recipient has a bearing on our message too, doesn't it? It reminds me of the soils, right? The seed was presented in the right way, but the soil was not receptive. And so everybody's perspective can be different. A few months ago, some friends of ours posted on Facebook a picture of their cat. And they were celebrating the cat turning 19 that day. And people were, oh, congratulations, you know, yay cat, that kind of thing. And you know what I thought? Does that mean our cat can live another 10 years? That is literally my first thought. Because I've been doing math, and I was thinking that 10 might be the max. You see, the manner in which it's presented and the perspective of the recipient, those determine how a message is received. We only get to control one of those. But let's do that, okay? Let's do that. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be appreciated, but we need to do that. These two ladies are our sisters in Christ. The one on the far right is the sister-in-law of our school director in Tirupati, India. Both of them, as you can see, are older. Both of them are widows. They live in a country that is vast majority Hindu. They are Christian. They live in a country that doesn't really appreciate women the way they should be. I think they should be, in the way God does. They also, by the way, live in the city in India that is the holiest city in the world for Hindus. There's a temple there that is to Hindus what Mecca is to Muslims. What do you do when you're a Christian widow in a predominantly Hindu country and especially city? We have a hard time even renting a property in that city because they won't rent to Christians. What do you do? I'll tell you what they did. They just go around talking to their neighbors and people they meet. And they've had Bible classes and Bible studies with women and children. And do you know what these two sisters have done? So far, they've brought 53 people to Jesus. It's not going to be easy. It isn't always going to be appreciated, but let's just do it anyway. And number 3, God will help us too. You see, if we go back to our text, while Jesus is painting this pretty bleak picture about how things are going to go for them, he says in verse 19 and 20, when they deliver you up, don't be anxious. We'll give you what to say. For it is not, verse 20, it is not you who speak, but it is the Spirit of your Father who speaks in you. God is going to help us as well. And we don't have to worry about it. How's it going to end? I don't know. What's the reception going to be like? I don't know. What's the possible ramifications to me? I don't know. But what I do know is God has promised to help. And we need to trust that, and we need to believe that, as we also have been commissioned. I mentioned my friend who is in the commercial real estate business. By the way, that picture pretty much sums up our relationship: food and joking around. I thought I was posing for this nice picture, and he did me wrong. But I was out eating with him and his family one night, and we're sitting at the table, and an old man walks in the door. And he immediately, his name's Noel, immediately smiled and got up and went and met the man. And I'm looking at his wife and children. We don't know what that's all about. And they chatted, and then he came back. We said, who was that? He said, that man is the one who shared with me a formula to appraise and evaluate the value of commercial real estate. And I asked him later, what if that man had never shared that with you? And he instantly said, my life would be completely different. You know where I'm going. My question for us today is, whose eternity will you change? Whose eternity will you change? I want to end with showing you just an illustration. I asked Martha for a knife, and apparently she thought I was going to field dress a deer. If you were to ask me how many seeds are in this apple, that's a pretty easy thing to figure out. I can open this apple, and I can easily pull out the seeds, and I can count them. But here's a better question. How many apples are in this seed? There's a lot of seeds in this room. And today we need to be reminded of the importance of our commission, of our responsibility, of our privilege, and do all we can to change the eternity of everybody we can. God bless us.